Dr. Jawahar Surisetti. We have today with us Dr. Ramanan, a known name. He is the former mission director, Atal Innovation Mission, and also the first mission director. And an additional secretary to Niti Aayog. He was the senior vice president, Tata Consultancy Services. Am I using the word was right or wrong?
Yes, correct.
Correct. Okay. We have Chintan. Chintan is an alumnus of IIT and IIM. And he is Chintan Bakshi is partner incubation at CII.co, India's leading startup incubation center. Then we have G. Venugopal, a technocrat and entrepreneur and a social sector veteran. He is based out of Hyderabad, which happens to be one of the strongholds of the innovation sector. We can call it an innovation hub also. But anyway, now things are moving to smaller places also. I happen to advise governments and have been closely working with two of our previous prime ministers as well as the current prime minister on youth affairs. So let's start. And we'll keep it informal. It's a chat. It's basically a chat where we'll have two segments. The first segment is how do young boys and girls generate ideas? And the second part is how do we evaluate the ideas that they generate, because they'll generate in large numbers. So forgetting about the success and failure of it, how do we evaluate? That's the basic discussion. We are keeping it very simple because these videos will go out to the boys and girls in schools, the ecosystem, they'll go into that. So I'll start with Mr. Ramanan. We've seen this Startup India thing going, it's come a long way. We can understand that. And there are huge numbers. The Tinkerpreneur thing which has just happened, I had lakhs of young boys and girls already tinkering there. So what is the right time to get into this ecosystem and start generating ideas?
Thank you, Dr. Jawahar, and thank you for enabling this discussion in this very distinguished panel. And I feel it's a great privilege and an honor to be part of this. As you rightly mentioned, the first and most important thing is how do you create a culture of innovation? Before we talk about entrepreneurship, startups, and so on, it's very important to create the culture of innovation. And the culture of innovation starts when you start acquiring a problem-solving, innovative mindset. And that also happens only when you start looking at the world around you. I mean, you're not just being taught something in schools or in universities just from the idea of, get good marks, get into a good university or go abroad and get into a good job. That has served us very well so far until today. And it has, of course, created a $190 billion IT/ITS service industry that this country is very proud of. But if you look at the future, and if you look at even the post-COVID-19 world or the COVID-19 world that we are in, it's very, very important. And if you look at all the challenges that our country faces and the world faces, that we need innovators and problem solvers and to create this culture of innovation. And so I think there is, this needs to be inducted at a very early age. And this is why you have a mission like Atal Innovation Mission, which was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister. And the idea is, can we create this problem solving, innovative thinking right at the school level? We are talking about grade 6 onwards. Why grade 6? One can say, can it not be grade 4, grade 3, or should it be much later? But the idea is we induct people into a rote learning mindset very early in school. And somewhere the teachers, the faculty, the parents, society also starts looking at, just try to understand and understand the theoretical concepts or try to get good marks. Don't even try to understand, but just get good marks and continue on your career. And that's how success is measured. And that's how people start measuring themselves. With the result that even when they get into industry, they don't become problem solvers, product creators, innovators, and potential job creators of the future. So I think the age limit today is no longer, and today we also have affordable, accessible, available, and advanced technology, which can be harnessed and where you can induct young students or school students into a problem solving, innovative mindset thinking because of do-it-yourself kits that are available, whether it is 3D printing, robotics, IoT, miniaturized electronics, or augmented virtual reality. And so that's what the Atal Innovation Mission has been trying to do, create these thousands of tinkering labs across the country. More than 10,000 labs are already being established with more than 8,700 operational. And more than 4 million students are getting exposed to this exciting world of innovation. So what do we do to them? We tell them nothing. There is no marks to be obtained in all of this. Go to the tinkering lab, dabble with the technology, play with it, tinker with it in an atmosphere of fun and learning. Go to the society around you, from your mall to your home, from your home to the hospital, to the playground, to your school, and look at what are the problems that people face. And thereby, this curiosity and this element of discovery of a problem and identification of a problem, and then coming back in small teams and working together to say what could be a solution, a possible solution, what could be an idea or an imagination that you have that can result in a potential solution. And this has had remarkable effect upon all the students today. And as is evidence in the Tinkerpreneur program. So, we have in this Tinkerpreneur program that was there, more than 8,900 ideas and prototype innovations came out, not just ideas or prototype innovations came out from the young school students. And that I think is, once students launch on this problem solving, innovative thinking, creative journey, they cannot look back. They don't want to go back. They want to build on it. And thereby, I think we will create what ultimately will be a very transformative workforce and a student force in the universities, where they can exercise their idea into startups, and then startups go on to become companies or agents for transformation.
Lovely, lovely. A good start to our discussion. Chintan, so the age primarily is something that we could decide on. He said 6th we start, and even the National Education Policy says that. But having said that, do you think that as the children grow up, the capacity to ideate because of they becoming more close-minded diminishes?
So, I mean, just as an initial disclaimer, I mean, while we as an organization have worked with young innovators, but it's been mostly with college students, right? We haven't had too much experience of working with school students as such, as Dr. Ramanan was talking about, and I think they've done some phenomenal work with the tinkering labs, etc. So I will really kind of address it from a post-school sort of a perspective. So I think there are fundamentally two issues at hand. I mean, the first issue which Dr. Ramanan also talked about is the cultural issue, right? I mean, there needs to be a culture, there needs to be a that sort of flexibility, space, whatever you might want to call it, where because innovation and doing startups and problem solving is not a very linear approach. I mean, it's a you'll have to do 4 or 5 things and fail multiple times before you start getting some sense of what is working. So it's not something which can be programmed and put into a curriculum and structured and evaluated typically the way in which it gets done in a formal education system, right? So it needs space. You need to actually be able to get out of the structure and then do stuff, right? So there needs to be that culture. I mean, I think the best fit, or the best word, the right word is that there needs to be that culture. Culture means that you need to have flexibility, space. I mean, the whatever the faculty, whether it's the college faculty, school faculty, they need to sort of be promoting it. They need to be bought into the entire idea. So I think as far as the culture is concerned, I mean, my general sense is, having worked again with college students, is sooner the better. I mean, if there's a culture of innovation, then you need to start working perhaps from the first year onwards, right? And we can maybe extend that further and say that you need to do it much earlier. whether it's class 6th or 8th or 9th, that's for the experts to decide. But yeah, I mean, from a culture perspective, it needs to be fairly early. The second issue which comes into perspective, and that's something which I've seen playing out, is the aspect of I would say security, right, or peer pressure, or parental pressure, and all these things. We may argue that it's the same culture playing out, but there may be some genuine economic issues also at play. I mean, some students may have those lack of flexibilities to experiment around for some time, which is something which is required when you are doing an innovation or a startup. You may be able to hit the bullseye in 2 years, but it may take more time. So the second, from a second perspective, what I have seen work out typically with students is that a lot of students, after having worked for a couple of years, maybe 2 years, 3 years, and that's the sweet spot from a startup perspective, that once they have gone out, once they have sort of gained some confidence also that they will be able to earn a living. Earning a living is not such a huge issue that it's made out to be, especially when you're in school, college. I mean, they have worked for 1 or 2 years, they have got that sense, then they get that sort of confidence to take the plunge. So what I'm really talking about is that, the innovation processes need to start early on, but seeing students actually converting those innovations into startups may be also an issue of quality, financial stability, etc. Of course, there can be interventions to address that. You could have, for example, a lot of colleges have let's say a 2-year placement holiday where you get a stipend and you can continue working on your startup for that 2-year period. So the second issue, in fact, both the issues can be addressed to some extent with some interventions. Yeah, so I think that's my quick initial perspective.
Lovely. Venugopal, as an entrepreneur with maybe you've been there in that space for 30 years. So you are the person who has been there, done it, kind of a person. So what do you think is lacking in the ecosystem, or was lacking in the ecosystem, that is currently suddenly the startup ecosystem has grown up?
Yeah, so I'll put it this way. If you look at India as a whole, I think it is not one homogeneous unit. Because I've been an entrepreneur, I've also worked with the tech sector, I've also worked with the social sector for a long period. And so when we worked with the social sector, we actually trained a lot of people to become entrepreneurs, and these were predominantly from T3, T4 kind of towns. So they were looking at setting up business establishments, not classic startups as we see them. A few of them had some good innovations, but they were business establishments. The thing is, in spite of a lot of effort, and most of these are funded by the governments, in spite of that effort, out of the 3,400 odd people we would have trained over a period of 3-4 years, nearly 71% did not start. And that was not surprising actually, because it was to be expected. Some of the reasons Chintan also explained when he said that, there could be genuine reasons. There are economic reasons. Sometimes, they have the intent to start, but, they get a job. There was a big batch in Raipur, for example. We did a whole batch, and they were a very enthusiastic set of boys, 22 boys in that particular batch. And at that time, the government opened up some jobs, the Chhattisgarh state government, and nearly all of them got a job there. And it was too hard for them to forego that. Probably even if they wanted, their houses would not have allowed them to forego that. So they had to go for it. But the interesting thing is, some of them came back 2 years later, and they are now contemplating or have just started some enterprises. So this is one part. In the rural ecosystem outside the big cities, I would say a fairly evolved system has come in big cities like Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, Mumbai, Chandigarh, Ahmedabad, NCR, Kolkata, all these places, and to a lesser extent in places like Raipur, Bhubaneswar, Bhopal, and all that, Indore. So that's to a much lesser extent. But these big cities, beyond these big cities, there is a different India where we really have to push hard for innovation. There's a lot more work to be done there. In the big cities, yes. When we started my first enterprise was as far back as 1986. And we had to really struggle because there was it was a MSME. We did some products on signaling and communication. It was to make the railway signaling fail safe and some, non-destructive testing of coils and things like that. It was hardcore technical. My background is electronics engineering. So we joined together and did that. But, it was extremely difficult those days. I mean, to actually set up the industry, go about, because the number of debt, you had to go in only for equity or debt. Equity wasn't coming like it is these days. And debt wasn't easy to come. And we were lucky to have some kind of a partnership with a German company which saw some technical strengths in us. But even that kind of funding was very, very, at best they would evaluate the share at par or things like that. We're not talking of valuations like, not even hundreds of, not even millions, leave alone beyond that. So that was a phase which was very difficult. And then, we had to ultimately shut it down when 2000 came. So, but between 2000 and 2015, I think a lot has happened. And it started with Bangalore, where, it just evolved. I can't really pinpoint and say there was this incident or that incident or this trigger from the government. How this all started, we don't know, but IT is generally the mother of all these things. I think it has matured because of the availability of technologies. One is most of these systems that we deal with today have phenomenal amount of computing power, and the cost has come down, which means the reach has gone to nearly everybody. We are talking of about 80-85% coverage of mobile phones. So this really has expanded the market. In late 90s, 2000s, they used to talk of potential. They used to say India is potentially, 250 million subscribers or 500 million subscribers into X, into X, into X, and all that while making the Excel. A lot of that has become a reality now. And these two factors, one is the ecosystem, the technical ecosystem, which supports development of startups. And why I say technology is because it has impacted nearly every sector. You take agriculture, we deal with NGOs, it is technology which is bringing all the, new innovations. You take pharma, it is technology, whether it is in new drug development, whether it is in health care delivery, whether it is in digital diagnostics, whether it is in personal diagnostics. It is the growth of technology which has become the enabler. So I think these two factors have contributed largely to development of this ecosystem.
Love. So I got into this ecosystem of innovation by accident. That mind was very finicky for me. I am not a technology person like the three of you. But that Okida jo tha, that was there. So we started with a very basic innovation. Is that bachelors were not able to make rotis goal. This is a problem. We would make all maps of states of India, but we would not make a circular roti. So then we had how to make life easier for them. We did a survey And then we had that roti press. You put that ball of dough in the thing and press. It comes out circular. Just apply oil so that it comes out easily. So the innovation long back we started. We sold 1 lakh units on the day one on Asia Skynet, which was the first satellite shopping center. We sold that, and then that it beat us. The innovation beat us, and then I started doing all sorts of things. Silicon Valley called me. Samsung sponsored 8 innovators on a UN expedition, and that was the high point for us. When the 2030 water is going to be scarce was the challenge. How do you do it? 2000 this was. So when we went there, all again people from the technical background, they said, let's do this, let's do this to save water. I had a simple idea. It won $1 lakh US dollars. And it was that when you go to the toilet and use the commode, every time you shit, you flush 5 liters of water. And every time you piss, you flush 5 liters of water. Average person pisses 4 times a day or 5 times a day. And once you go to shit. But every time you flush 5 liters. So I said, why not have 2 buttons? One of 2 liters, one of 5 liters. Every time you piss, press the smaller button, you save 3 liters every time. So every person, if he saves 12 to 15 liters a day, it's humongous. So it was that
Jawahar sir has dropped. Maybe he has connection issues.
Yeah, he is.
He'll be joining back.
Yeah, we'll just wait.
Varghese sir, can you just call him?
Yeah, he will be joining. Actually, because of connection problem, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got.
He's back.
Sorry, I got disconnected.
Right.
Yeah. So that drew an applause, and from that was the time it actually caught on, and then we've helped millions of children. The Art of Thinking program that we run, which Dr. Ramanan was referring to at Catch Them at Early Age, and Chintan was saying that the college, he is in the college ecosystem, and what we've tried to do in the US also is create an ecosystem and leave it there. The word tinkering is an appropriate word because actually you are leaving them to tinker. We are not doing anything structured.
Absolutely.
You are not doing anything structured, as Chintan has said. So the worry is not to create a curriculum, but allow an ecosystem where they can tinker with things, and then automatically that insight develops. As you get an idea, you do those things. You should be in that ecosystem. So I think we've done pretty well in that in India also. I thought India was very not doing well when we were doing the Art of Thinking in the US, funded by Microsoft and Bill and Melinda Gates Fund. But it was a fantastic journey of India that we've seen. Sir, again, coming back to Dr. Ramanan. In the evaluation stage, a lot of young boys and girls think that their idea is the best. So each of them, like the mother feels that my child is the best, the student also feels, or the startup enthusiast feels that his idea is the best. So what are the parameters? If, like we say that self-attestation is going on these days, we don't go to a gazetted officer to attest. So how do the children or young boys and girls evaluate their own ideas and come up, yes, is this okay, is this not okay, or should I go ahead or should I not go ahead? You are on mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Jawahar. And I just want to re-emphasize on those 3 very important points. that you all the three brought up before I answer your question. First is, of course, how do you build that ecosystem of entrepreneurship? We talked about culture of innovation, but you have to create that ecosystem. And therefore, we are creating incubators, world-class incubators in universities, which can set them up. And also community innovation centers to address the point that Dr. Venugopal said, that you need to be able to create innovation hubs all across the country. I mean, we have 650,000 villages, 715 districts, 8,000 small towns and cities, and only 8 tier 1 cities. And so if you are just creating innovation ecosystem in these 8 tier 1 cities, you're still not addressing the migrational problem, and you're not creating opportunities for innovation and job creation across the country in the aspirational districts or in the remote parts of the country. And to also emphasize on the point that you made, today's startups and innovation has become very much possible because of this great convergence of computer communication, sensor technologies, and processing technologies, and data analytics. So all of this is making AI, blockchain, and a whole plethora of technologies are becoming available. And this great convergence of a growing demographic dividend, a fast growing economy, which is needed to support innovation and entrepreneurship, and the availability of technology for synthesizing all of this and coming up with new ideas and creating solutions for every little problem we are seeing. I mean, we have 22% below the poverty line, 44% agroeconomy base, and we have 115 of our districts as aspirational districts, which are at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of clean drinking water, sanitation, waste management, affordable housing, or lives and livelihoods. Now, you said, how do you go about evaluating a startup idea? So for me, actually, and I have shared this with many people, for me, the solution lies in the word of startups itself. The S in the startup stands for solution. Are you creating a solution for an existing problem or solving a problem that is being solved poorly? So you're improving upon an existing solution, or you're creating a solution for a problem that you see. So that is first. And this solution has to be sustainable in today's world, COVID-19, climate change, and all of that. You have to bring this element of sustainability in your solution. It has to be scalable. It has to have societal impact. So that's the very first thing that you have to start looking at. What is the problem I'm solving, and what is the solution I'm creating, and what is the uniqueness of this solution so that it is sustainable and it has impact at a societal level and it is scalable. The second is, as all of us said, is that word T stands for technology. Are we integrating latest technologies in either the creation of the startup or the dissemination of the solution or the service upon which this solution is being created? It need not be that your solution has to be always technology created, but you should use technology for disseminating this and reaching to the end of the planet. So from Jodhpur to Japan, or from Shillong to Seattle, or from Sikkim to San Francisco, how can your solution, your service, or your product be able to leverage technology and the digital reach, or leverage technology in the creation? The A stands for the agility. Is your solution bringing more agility in this world of ours? Because today, people require quick solutions. I mean, whether it is hospital emergency, healthcare, and so on and so forth, and it is possible to bring that. But this agility in your startup, how is it being enabled? It cannot be enabled unless you have a proper action plan. Having just a dream and an idea and not having an action plan to be able to achieve some very clear milestones and deliverables in your startup journey. Like Dr. Chintan said, in 2 years, how do you stand on your own legs? You may be part of an incubator, but you have to stand on your own legs. So the A stands for the agility and action plan for achievement. Then the R stands for re-engineering. Your idea needs to go through multiple reiterations by running it past customers and potential customers that you're targeting. Don't think your idea will work in the first shot. So have you actually tried out this idea with 10 possible customers, bounced it off and asked them, does it make sense? Or they may come back and say, oh, we already have seen this. There is already a solution. Why are you reinventing the wheel? So R stands for that reiteration, re-engineering of the idea until it becomes a viable prototype and a viable product. The U stands for uniqueness of your approach. A startup cannot be just saying that, I'm creating a solution, but there are 10 other solutions which are even better, competitive, more cost effective, and more effective and more prevalent. So you need to bring some uniqueness in your solution. Also, you need to bring a uniqueness in your approach to the market. And the another T in the startup stands for team. Are you gone are the days where you can be the inventor and the producer, the actor, everything in a movie? You have to have a team and the right team to complement your work. So do you have a partner within your startup? I mean, 2 or 3 people who bring a complementary set of skills so that your idea can blossom and become truly a product and a company. And finally, the P stands for persistence. You need to have persistence, you need to have passion, but you need to also ensure that you have a process that you are following in your startup with a clear goal. Because unless, ideas and creativity, unless combined with a certain process of achievement of its intended goals and deliverables, will not have effect. So, and the final S in the startups stands for societal impact. Like I said, you have to have even the simplest of ideas, like what you said, making a roti maker, right? And getting it round. I mean, it has societal impact. It has the ability for generating jobs. It has the ability to be used in a very easy manner. It is sustainable and so on. So all of these, anything that you do, you have to see it is sustainable and have societal impact. So I think a startup, when it evaluate on all, just use the word startup and evaluate yourself. And I think you will know what you have to do.
Lovely, simple. Chintan is there, yes. So Chintan, are you there? Hello, Chintan. Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I'm there. I was unable to.
So we from an incubation point of view, how do you evaluate an idea?
Yeah, see, I think to put it very simply and in an abstract, summarized sort of a format, I think the proof of the pudding really lies in customer validation, right? I mean, unless it's a very high-tech sort of a breakthrough technology, which may have different use cases which will emerge, which is generally not the norm, right? It's more like an exception. But most ideas, I think the test of an idea, maybe at an idea or a prototype stage, is to really see whether the customer needs it, whether it is solving a customer's problem. That's really the test of it. And in a way, I think that needs to be one of the key components of entrepreneurship education. I mean, students should not be innovating. I mean, I agree that there needs to be one part which is really creativity, tinkering, breaking, doing stuff, etc. That's really the maybe the ideation stage and understanding what technology can do, etc. But once that phase or that process is done, the next process immediately, right? Not after you have developed a full-fledged product, immediately after the initial level of tinkering, whatever is done, and you come up with some sort of an idea or an early prototype, it's to take it to a customer and do customer validation. Maybe your product may not be fully usable. I mean, there are tools and techniques to do even customer validation for a prototype which may not be functioning fully. Right? I mean, you can do some sort of a hybrid of a demo plus a customer feedback. But I think that's one of the key elements which needs to be brought into the whether into the curriculum or into mindsets of students, youth, or the trainers, faculty, that ultimately whatever we make needs to have a certain use case, needs to be solving a problem. In fact, the ideal way to do it is that the tinkering also should happen as a effect of some initial causes that students have been kind of exposed to, right? So ultimately that's the benchmark. I mean, there needs to be a need for it. There needs to be a customer who's willing to use it, and it's solving a problem. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just keep it short.
Yeah, good, great. Venugopal, so from the social entrepreneurship point of view, do the same rules apply, or are they something slightly different?
I think pretty much the same rules apply. In terms of, most often entrepreneurs from the rural areas or who work in the social space are tempted to work on problems which they themselves have experienced very often. But from a valuation point of view, it would be a lot more beneficial if they look at a problem which is, let's say, very well-known problem, familiar to a lot of people. We know that it is looming large and it is likely to grow in the years to come. It's something which requires a very high level of urgency. It has to be tackled immediately, and whatever solution that we arrive at should be, it should be required pretty frequently. Now, let's say, look at a problem like climate change. Climate change is a very broad umbrella term, but yes, so the problem is really looming large. And I think any solution which works on problems related to climate change are going to be, the perfect kind of enterprises. And this is also the same principles can be applied to, your normal businesses too, or agriculture. For example, we know that, the world is going to run short of grains very soon. We need the food grains. There hasn't been any increase in yield, significant increase in yield since the 90s, and the total cultivable land is shrinking. So we need to think in terms of how to grow more grain. So it's a problem which is growing. It is likely to loom large. I mean, you can't allow people to die of hunger in many countries. So this is pretty much the same criteria in terms of projects, both social as well as the other things. I think the layer of technology that is going to be deployed is also pretty much the same when you tackle social problems, because it is very clear now. I mean, amply clear to everybody that deployment of technology actually supports removal of inequities. The mobile phone has removed so much of inequities. There is so much which you can do. The DBT is a classic example, direct benefit transfer. You don't need any interface, it just reaches the beneficiary straight away without any deductions, without any middlemen, without any delays, etc. So clearly, the very same principle, whether it is a social sector, rural areas, or whether we are looking at problems related to, let's say, edtech. Now, edtech has an overlap with social also. I mean, it's not pure this thing, but so whichever fintech, for example, again, fintech has an overlap with social sector. Pharma again has an overlap. If you look at remote telemedicine or remote healthcare, now one of the biggest beneficiaries is going to be rural, because that's where we are grappling with the problem of setting up affordable quality healthcare. Now, this is a big solution for that. So I think it is pretty much the same, whether you're looking at social or otherwise.
Now, come 2020 January, and this COVID virus came into 2020, and the whole scenario changed. We have not seen things like this happening, and businesses had to relook at their whole thing. So I also understand that adaptability has to be one of the factors now, which will also need to be figured out when you are innovating or when you have an idea. Whether, see, in case, for example, the education system nearly collapsed. So the schools, the teachers were not very tech savvy. The students were more technology savvy than this generation of teachers. So on and so forth. So what we tried to do, it's a very simple, silly kind of example. So there were around 300 telephone calls every day to me as a psychologist that we are depressed, sitting in the walls, no peers to play with. Our parents are not allowing us to go. These were calls from young boys and girls of schools and colleges. So what we thought is, let's use Facebook, and we took out the numbers. And believe me, we started with schools. So there were 11,500 families playing Edutakshari. This was the innovation. Edutakshari with me every Sunday, 3 hours. We started with 1 hour, and it was very simple. All families sit with me on Facebook, and then I will sing one song. माई मेरी मुंडेर पे तेरे बोल रहा है कागा, जी से खत्म होता है. So one family picks it up. If the student is in class 6, he says G for Gandhiji. He speaks, Gandhiji was born in Porbandar, his father was so and so, so and so, so and so. 2 lines. The family can add on to the value. The rest of the 11,499 families are listening to your knowledge that the student is giving. And then Gandhiji, J in Hindi, J, Ja. Then they sing a song with Ja. The last letter of that song again is the next cue for the word that the next student chooses. So any song, if suppose it ends with L, then he will say Ladakh. Ladakh is the new state that has been formed in India, and so on. Depending on the class that they have, they choose the word. And so Edutakshari, actually we started for half an hour. But then it caught on so much. We started with 1,500 families. It went on to 11,500 families. See, ultimately, if we are able to adapt our idea to a particular situation, I think it is going to be useful to the consumer, as Chintan has said. So consumer validation is something which is important. So I again come back for the last segment, and this is very short. So Dr. Ramanan, what are the 3 things that possible things that we can do today to have a better startup ecosystem and to bring in children and youth into the fold? 3 small things that we can do.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is, as you mentioned, leverage digital technology to its help in being able to bring people to the startup ecosystem. And the example that you gave is a wonderful example. Today, I do not know of any family, including my own, who are not engaged through the social media in learning new things. And there are so many people teaching new things, whether it is yoga, whether it is sports, whether it is Bollywood dancing, whatever. I think it has just opened a plethora of opportunities for education. And not in the traditional sense of the education, art of living courses, you name it, everything is there. And people are really engaging, and so leverage digital technology to the help. Second is, I think, I do hope that this COVID-19 will come to an end and will allow physical interaction, because that is important. But I also think that from a startup point of view, the COVID-19 has brought an unprecedented set of new opportunities to work on. And therefore, building an awareness of these opportunities and related technologies which can create solutions, that awareness building is very important. And that is what we need to do. For example, we launched what were called, exactly like you, Tinker from Home modules for the young students. And this Tinker from Home module just caught on like wildfire. And not only that, parents also got involved. We involved parents in saying that, can you create games? For example, game creation became a module that we introduced, and then the parents, the family, and other members got involved in the creation of a game. And we made, using, today you have libraries and so on, which can make that happen. So building this awareness of the opportunities and allowing students to experiment and so on is very important. Third is, I think there has been a tremendous access being created of international, global reservoirs of information, right? So this access, we need to somehow bring a structure and enable universities, students to access all of this information through mobile phone technologies, through smartphones, through massively oriented class, online class and so on. So I think access to information is so very important, and the government should take many initiatives, and also the private sector should take many initiatives in seeing how to enable this access, not just access to information, but access to resources, financial resources, like he talked about for the farmers in the remote agricultural farms and so on, and rural access and infrastructure access. And I think that's very beautifully captured by Honorable Prime Minister, who says one of the pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat is infrastructure. So how do you create smart physical infrastructure and couple it with digital infrastructure to be able to realize the startup dream?
Clear, lovely. Chintan, you can add policy also in case you have anything in your 3 points.
Yeah, so I think, and just to clarify, are you Dr. Jawahar talking from a student perspective or in general, the overall?
In general. In general,
okay. Yeah, so I would say from if we start with the students as a target group, I think there needs to be, and it is happening to a large extent. It's happening. It may take time, but whatever I'm saying may happen over the next 2, 3, 4 years or whatever. So basically, in a way, a sort of liberalization of education systems, right? I mean, the new education policy talks about it. So that's why I mentioned that it's probably going to happen over the next few years. May not happen immediately, but some parts of it may have started happening. Because, innovation, see, there's another key aspect of innovation and startups, which is alignment with your personal goals, right? See, I mean, we have been talking about the external environment for innovation. There is a deeper subjective element also, right? Essentially, what it means is that I need to be passionate about solving that problem as an entrepreneur. I mean, I have the tools, I have funding available, this, that, but I am not passionate about it. I am still trying to figure out what I want to do, right? I am not focused. I mean, there's a very, very important subjective human element. That's really the core of it. I mean, we have seen entrepreneurs and innovators coming out of very constrained and resource areas. The reason why they are able to come out is because they are passionate about it, and there is a deeper connection they have to the cause, and therefore they are able to innovate. So, I mean, I think liberalization of the education system is a key element there. As long as we have a very structured and a very imposed and a very grade-oriented, marks-oriented, I mean, education policy talks about it. In a way, it realizes the fact that most grades, marks, etc., are largely useless in the current scenario. A lot of companies don't care too much about your degrees and all that. I mean, they care about your attitude and your soft skills and your cultural fit, etc. Most new age companies are really focusing on that. I mean, they don't really care about your grades and all that. So that's a very important element. I mean, that's the reason why Silicon Valley booms, because it's on the West Coast. Most colleges there were very liberal. So you need a very liberal sort of an environment for innovation to happen. So I would say that's the fundamental element. I mean, the other kind of recommendations, etc., whether it is, because there is, see, in the entire innovation startup value chain, the market connect happens much later, right? The market connect really happens once your product starts selling and there is some validation. That's the time investors come in. I mean, investors, they may be talking about venture capital and all that, but they will come in only once there is enough validation and there is enough traction and all that. But from an idea to coming to that stage, maybe a fairly large journey, right? So you need incubators and, Atal Innovation Mission, for example, Department of Science and Technology have done some stellar work. More can be done. We can even talk about having incubators which are located in tier 2, tier 3 cities. We can talk about having incubators and maybe let's say grant funding or entrepreneur in residence programs. Let's say specifically for example, I'm just taking an example for designers, right? Let's say designers from NIFT and craft areas. Those could be some areas where you could have specific incubators, specific schemes. I mean, all of these things will add on. So the incubation infrastructure needs to get more broad-based, right? I would say that's the second piece. I think some of the points Dr. Ramanan talked about. So I'll just maybe just do these two recommendations. So one is liberalization of the education, and second is broad basing of the incubator, accelerator, support ecosystem for startups. Yeah.
Venugopal.
So
yeah, again here, I think one of the key things that has happened from out of COVID is a number of enterprises, especially the small, micro and small enterprises, have got seriously disrupted. And no, they form a very important part of the economy. And some of them, by virtue of the products they deal in, they've been able to hop onto platforms which support them to sell online. But a lot of them have not been able to do that because they've been in products which have completely lost, like say your restaurants or food carts, host of other things. Now, I think a lot of these businesses have also gone out for good. Some of these businesses, they know this thing and trying to revive these businesses. So the first component that I would say is we have to put in a significant quantum of resources and thinking onto reskilling a number of our resources. This is something which the government is immensely aware of, and they've been thinking on it, but I would put this right on top because I think it's not just about entrepreneurship. Even a large number of people, though there are a huge number of new opportunities that have opened up, like Dr. Ramanan said, phenomenal amount of opportunities that have opened up. But they're not denying the fact that some of the old opportunities are lost forever, and they need to be reskilled or put into some kind of a training program so that they can adapt to the new circumstance. This is a very key component. The second thing is, I would say the democratization of technology, because technology, I believe, is a great leveler. And I think the government should either subsidize or work on some programs where technology and data is either available at a very low cost. It's pretty cheap in India. There's no denying that, and it should be even more accessible. And the related training or the platforms that need to be built to support again the entrepreneurs has to come on board. Again, here when we talk of startups, our thinking typically goes into those large startups which are flush with funding and all that. We have to understand that overwhelmingly large number of startups don't get that kind of funding and they are still struggling, and many of them have the potential to really grow big. So my second point would be the democratization or making infrastructure accessible, affordable, easily available to all businesses and enterprises. The third could be, the financial options. The financial options, I think there is a limitation on to what extent the government can really do. And they have tried their best to offer a lot to enterprises. But I think a large, even our own past data, I mean, when we looked at the number of units which started and shut down, more than 50% of the units shut down because they ran out of money. That's simply the most important reason. So it's not that their product was not viable. I mean, it's just that, if you have 3 clients, major clients, and they don't pay up, and they don't pay up for 3 months, they don't pay up for 6 months, and they don't pay up for 9 months, then you're finished. During this period, we've also engaged with about 700 odd, a group of volunteers. Some of my ex-alumni, or we engaged with a lot of small, medium enterprises. And our experience was that a lot of them are short of cash, and that can be a killer. So I think these are the 3 things. I mean, they are very, I won't say the skilling part is the first, availability of financial options and, technology democratization or making technology affordable, available to all people. These are the 3 things in my bucket.
Okay, lovely, lovely. So I think it's time to close down. I have only 2 minutes. I can only make Maggie out of it. Okay, so, what I wanted to sum up was, Chintan raised a very pertinent point of internal dynamics, the passion, because I see a lot of young boys and girls getting into the startup ecosystem just to show off. Maybe they have a very substandard view of it. They only think funding will just come or something like that. There are a lot of misnomers that might be happening. So that passion, if it is missing, probably yes, we have our mothers at home who show years and years. If I say 6:30, I have to go to office, my mother will still give me the same tasty breakfast that she was giving 20 years ago because of the passion, which usually the young boys and girls today, many of them fail because of that, because the initial thought itself is wrong. So the internal dynamics, I 100% agree with Chintan, has to be the attitude, the passion, etc. The second is that the current dispensation at the center is trying to see that the bandwidth reaches the last person in the villages. Now, once that happens, I am very sure that our looking at only the major cities is gone, because these are the, I have worked with them. We have something which is coming up, which is known as Zen India. Zen is Zamini and Entrepreneurship India. So we are looking at the last person and an entrepreneur in them, because he is the one who is ideating for the problems that he is facing. And we've seen this happening, that you said funds is something that, and we've seen this sort itself out. So we have a Facebook group of 2 lakh people, and we help people identify hospitals for operation, kidney transplant, this, that, and there is a cash shortage invariably in the poor people. So what we do is, whenever there is a cash shortage, we do crowdfunding in that group. So 1 rupee each of us puts, it is 2 lakh rupees. It doesn't pinch us at all, but it is 2 lakhs. It's a huge amount, which helps a kidney transplant. So I am looking at crowdfunding also for social entrepreneurship as a huge contributor for funding, instead of looking to the government at all places. So I think we'll wind up a very good, very, very valuable discussion we've had today. I am very thankful to Dr. Ramanan, Chintan, and Venugopal for giving such valuable inputs. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, sir.